The modern American conservative movement, which is in the title of my piece, A Motorcycle Ride Through America's Many-Sided Conservative Movement from Taft to Reagan, there's every reason to believe that starting with 45 and 50, you get this opposition to the three things. The New Deal itself, the New Deal's conduct of the war, both expanded the government, and then something I've written on before, and that is the change in the Supreme Court, where we now have a new philosophy of expanded authority and power based upon what justices think the law ought to be. That's there by the early 40s. So I hit on this idea of the courtship of conservatism and the Republican Party, and I said, how can you handle that huge problem? Look at the presidential candidates. And I had to do Taft separately because he was there for many years already as a conservative Republican, but he was never successful in 3 attempts to get the nomination. And then you start in with Eisenhower. Well, he's appreciated by conservatives, but not loved. And Nixon is loved for a while, but in the end, he sinks his own ship. And he was loved early on because he was from Orange County, California, which was a hotbed of right conservatism, if you put it that way. And of course, he was a remarkable political person. And Ford wound up in the office, and as I said in my paper, in the conservative encyclopedia, they don't even have an entry on Ford. I'd urge people, if they're interested in conservatism, to read Ford because there's a kind of common sense decency and honesty. He always wanted to be speaker. He was 26 years from the Grand Rapids district. Well liked, never opposed, virtually never opposed, and then all of a sudden he's vice president and president. But he was not well liked by the average conservative. If you read the people who do all the publishing, and they're the more conservative conservatives, I think. You know, you get to Ford, and then the next thing you know, you got Reagan. Well, there's where you had a marriage of conservatism and the Republican Party. And why did that happen? It's because he was inclusive. Everybody knows that, or they should know that. And, you know, the 11th commandment, don't speak ill of the other guys in the party. But his practice was inclusive, and it was practical. He embraced them all, and he took the parts and put them together that supported his well-thought-out view as a conservative and a Republican. And so he's the one who put it together, and he should be a model for people. Well, then after Reagan leaves, then what do you have? Well, the George Bush I, and he's really an Eastern establishment Republican, like the Nelson Rockefeller, a little different, but something like that. Well, then later is Junior, and he was a born-again Christian, so that brought a lot of people in, and that's sincere on his part, there's no question. And then there were a couple of Supreme Court appointments that were definitely, I like to use the word traditional more often than people do. I don't call everything conservative. These were traditional because that's the way a lot of our justices were, and they weren't called conservative. They're just traditional, you know, the Constitution was central. But he got into these wars, and some liked it, some didn't. And pretty soon he spent a lot of money, and a lot of people didn't like that. So you don't have the same relationship. So now the question is, with the gang running now, the real question would be, if anybody's close to what Reagan was, they got a better chance of being elected than if they're something else, whatever that might be, ideological, rigid. I don't think that's going to go very far.